Welcome back, family. I wanted to go over some powerful parallels with Passover that I feel like we miss because we're too caught up in certain details, and sometimes we're just not looking at the word, understanding just how significant certain things are that seem random. And now that I believe many of us are waking up to that truth, that our Father put these things in the Word to just reveal how masterful His plan is and how wonderful the things are that He has done for His people. And so I wanted to connect some things that are really blowing my mind. And I'm going to start out with, of course, the very first Passover, the one that happened in Egypt. And this is one that many people are now starting to go back and remember, just like we are using this time as a remembrance of what our Messiah has done. People are doing both now. They're looking at the first Passover and seeing how it parallels. And I just thought that some of these parallels were obvious, pointing to the Messiah, like everyone says, but it goes far deeper. And that's the cool thing about the journey we're all on and our Father's truth. It's far deeper and far greater than we could ever wrap our minds around. But the original remembrance for Passover, when you go back to Exodus, when Moses is being shown what to do and why to have this Passover, he was told that it was about children in the future. People who didn't experience that were going to be walking with the children of Israel through that wilderness journey and beyond that. And it says here in chapter 12, and if ye should enter into the land which the Lord shall give you, as he has spoken, keep this service, and it shall come to pass if your sons say to you, what is this service? That you shall say to them, this Passover is a sacrifice to the Lord, as he defended the house of the children of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians, but delivered our houses. And so this is a remembrance of what the Most High has done. But again, it goes deeper than this. This is foreshadowing things to come as well, all the way up into Revelation. And so we have that remembrance, and it's good to do that. Your children are going to ask you, why are we doing this? And you can tell them all the many wonderful things, and it is a blessing. It's far greater of a blessing than going out and hunting for Easter eggs. I'm telling you from experience, I was caught up in that. And I'm not condemning those of you who are doing that. I did that, didn't see any harm in it at the time. However, you're missing out on a blessing, and your children will be missing out on a blessing as well. So it's good to do these things, like it says here, like he was telling Moses, to let them know what has happened and reflecting back on that journey. And when they were in Egypt on that 14th day, after they had killed that lamb in the evening, they were spreading blood on the doorpost. I think most of you are familiar with this account where they are spreading the blood over the doorpost, and the houses that had that blood on the doorpost were protected by the blood. And this blood wasn't just any blood, it was from a pure lamb that was without spot or blemish. And this lamb's blood wasn't just spread onto the doorway with any device. They used something. What did they use? Well, it tells us that they used hyssop. And I just read that and thought, okay, that's some plant or something. No big deal. Move along. However, I'm finding that hyssop is significant because it's used throughout the word for a specific purpose. And that purpose is cleansing. And so you have a plant that is used to cleanse people, to cleanse things, people that have touched the dead. But they are now using it for the first time that I'm seeing it being used in Exodus chapter 12, where they're dipping it in the blood and putting it on the lintels and the two side posts of these doors. And so this hyssop, again, not random, it has 12 chromosomes. So the object used to spread the blood onto the doorpost is not only for cleansing, it's also a plant that has 12 chromosomes. Remember, this blood is setting the 12 tribes free that have been imprisoned in Egypt and in bondage. And the flower of this specific plant is a few different colors as well: blue, pink, white, they tell us. And I'm sure possibly purple, because when I see it, most pictures look purple. Of course, I'm a guy and I only usually just know my primary colors, but most of you women can probably look at this and have all sorts of different names for all these different colors. But I see pink, blue, white, and a little bit of purple in there with these flowers of the hyssop that has 12 chromosomes. And so to look at that cleansing aspect of this plant, it was used in Numbers 19, where it was dipped in water and sprinkled on objects to clean them, things like the tent that they were dwelling in, or someone who had touched the dead. And even David in Psalms, he had some spiritual uncleanliness and he was wanting to be cleaned. And he said, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow." I believe this is prophetic because we flash forward to the crucifixion in John chapter 19, and we see the Messiah. He's on the cross in his last moments. This is where it's tough to go through and read and remember what he's gone through, but it's necessary. And you see that they are dipping something into a vessel, and it says full of vinegar. But when I go to the interlinear, it tells me that they were not just dipping it into vinegar, it was sour wine. Remember on Passover, when he had his Passover meal the night before this, what were they doing? They were having wine. They were having the unleavened bread. They were keeping the Passover meal with the Messiah. And they filled a sponge, it says, with vinegar. What did they put it on? They put it upon hyssop and put it up to his mouth. And some of the other gospels say that he didn't accept it. He didn't drink of it, but they put it up to his mouth. Reminds me of them, putting that blood up to the doorpost. They put it to his mouth on hyssop. So this is very much a parallel, I believe, to that doorpost and the hyssop, the purification. You already have the blood of the lamb aspect going on here, and people being about to be set free and grafted in to Israel. And these people are going to be purified. Remember Peter's vision that me and so many others once thought was about purifying pork, when in reality it was about purifying people. And the people that are grafted in, those sheep outside of the sheep pen, are grafted in to what is referred to as the olive tree. And you guys may remember us talking about this before. Kind of like that hyssop tree having 12 chromosomes, I think representing the 12 tribes. The olive tree has 46 chromosomes, just like you and I. And the really powerful thing about this, the olives that grow on there can be both black olives and green olives. So if you have ever had them, you're having fruit that grows from the exact same tree. And grafting something in isn't a natural process. You need an expert gardener to graft into a tree. And the tree has to be of the same kind or very, very similar. And the number of chromosomes is most likely going to factor in. Because if it's another similar type of olive tree to be grafted in, it's going to need to be a match of a very similar kind. And so, of all the trees our Father could have chosen to represent people being grafted into Israel, that olive tree is not random because of the other options out there. There's about 73,000 other options that do not have the 46 chromosomes. The only other one that does that I could find was the ash tree. And so it's by extreme intelligence that our Father chose this tree to represent being grafted into Israel. And as someone pointed out, it's probably why the Messiah was mistaken for a gardener first time he was seen after the resurrection. And so the grafting in, the hyssop with the 12 chromosomes, the olive tree with the 46. And remember, chromosomes weren't allegedly discovered until the 1800s, I believe. And so you have our Father knowing more about his creation than mankind ever did for thousands of years. He still does, but we're starting to figure out some things. And those things we're figuring out are showing us just how wonderfully crafted together not only we are, but his word is. So it's fascinating to see these things and remembering that although these parallels are powerful, we're remembering the original Passover as well as what our Messiah has done. Think about them both. The Father doing what he did at Passover, the Son doing what he did at Passover. They were both serving the children of Israel, and they were both providing them with food. Remember, the Messiah doing his Father's will fed the masses with bread. The Father, setting his people free, he fed the masses with manna for 40 years. The Messiah, after his resurrection, fed the people with wisdom for 40 days. When he hung on the cross, there was darkness for 3 hours. Before the Passover, there was darkness for 3 days. These things are for a reason. Even the legs are for a reason. We're going to see that. I want to look at those now because we just went through them with our studies, going through Exodus, witnessing how the evil ones had their magicians and sorcerers trying to mimic what the Father was doing, and they were able to mimic it to some degree, not replicate it, of course, but to mimic it with their demonic powers. The book of Jubilees tells us just that. It was powers of darkness that our Father allowed to help them out, but He didn't allow their plans to unfold. They wanted to kill Moses. He didn't allow that to happen. He put limits on what they could do. That's why it took three groups of them when Aaron cast his rod down and it turned into a serpent. They were able to do that, but it took the sorcerers, the charmers, and the wise men, all three of them and their demonic powers, to make three false serpents. And those false serpents, what happened to them? Of course, you guys mostly remember. They were swallowed up. I don't look at that as a plague. I know some people do. And I'm not saying I'm right on this. But when I'm laying this all out, I see that that was a sign and wonder, a true sign and a lying sign side by side, and the true sign prevailed. And this had to do with Aaron's rod. And so I've color coded this to help me see the differences here, the change in command, where you have at first Aaron, because Moses, he had some confidence issues. When he's talking about being used and speaking for the Most High, he wanted to find somebody else who could speak better than him. And I know there's a lot of you out there right now who are probably going through the same thing. You're feeling called to speak, but you're like, please choose somebody else. Don't choose me. I will sound like a bumbling fool if I try to talk. Trust me, I've been there. I know. I still feel that way to this very day. I understand what Moses is going through. And so, right here, Aaron was the one who, at first, with this very first plague, I believe is the first plague, put his rod out over the waters and smote the rivers, and they turned to blood. And it says that the charmers mimicked this. Now, here's what I want you to think of. If you're Pharaoh and you're depending on your charmers to do something, wouldn't you want them to take that water that was turned to blood, turn it back into water? They couldn't do that. They could not undo what the Father had done. They could just pretend to mimic it. While the water's turning to blood, they can just pretend they're doing that. They could just grab a jar and say, look, we're turning this into blood. It was already blood, most likely, you know? So they're not able to undo the Father's work. That's what's important to see here, because there's going to be another plague. And this second plague, very similar. You have disaster. You have frogs this time. And this is making mockery of their deities. And you have frogs now coming out of the river canals when Aaron stretched out his rod over the rivers. The charmers, it said, they were able to do likewise. Why would you want to do that? You're already been plagued with frogs. It's like, okay, step back, guys. Watch this. You're making more frogs come out. You're not helping. You're making matters worse. They could have had their, demons scaring some of them frogs underwater, forcing them to come out, whatever. But they're not undoing what the Father has done. They have their own lying false version. Cannot undo powerful hands of our Father. And then we see the fourth time the charmers are trying to replicate something. And this time they can't. And what is it? It's something that seems simple. It's lice. Aaron stretched out his rod and smote the dust of the earth, and lice covered the men and the beast. Charmers couldn't do that, and they definitely couldn't undo it. They were being plagued. And after this plague, we see the Most High step in. And it's death that follows. He smites the horses, the asses, the camels, the oxen, the sheep, all these animals of the Egyptians, and they died. Sorcerers could not do that. And then Moses scatters ashes. Now we see Moses stepping up, and he scatters ashes toward heaven before Pharaoh and his servants, and sores and boils appear on them and on their animals. The sorcerers, this time, they don't even try to attempt it. They couldn't even stand before Moses on account of their sores. We never see them again. They never come back. They never even try ever again. So Moses then stretches forth his hand toward heaven, and it says that Yahuwah made the hail fall on the Egyptians that didn't fear his words. Not all the Egyptians, it says the ones who didn't fear his words. And fire was also made to run along the ground. This is prophetic. Remember, Armageddon, hailstones, about 100 pounds, Gog and Magog, fire falling down. Right here, you have hail and fire. Sorcerers not even attempting this one. And of course, Moses then stretches forth his hand, and the locusts are devouring the land. That was a major plague. But the Most High, what did he do? He brought in wind strong from the opposite direction and cast the locust into the Red Sea. Maybe that should have been a warning to the Egyptians, but the sorcerers still not replicating any of this. And then we have Moses stretching out his hand over the land this time, and it became dark for 3 days. Remember, it was dark for 3 hours when the Messiah was on the cross at Passover. Now it's dark for 3 days, and it's about to be Passover because the Father is now going to send in the destroyer of the dwelling places that weren't covered by the blood of the Lamb to slay the firstborn. But what I find extremely powerful here at the end is in Revelation chapter 15. Because remember, after they got set free out of Egypt, made it across the water, they were singing the song of Moses. And Revelation says here, and I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues. For in them is filled up the wrath of God, and I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire. How do you make glass? You melt sand. Remember with the Red Sea crossing, what do we have? We have a sea of glass right here, melted sand. It's not perfect glass because the sand wasn't filtered, but if you melt sand, sand and soil, it's going to look like this. It takes about 3,000 plus degrees to do this. We have stones infused in these glass sand puddles. Powerful proof of this Exodus right there where it happened. And in Revelation, you see here this great and marvelous sign, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues. There was the 7 first ones we just talked about, I believe. For in them is filled up the wrath of God, and I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name. Stand on the sea of glass. Makes me wonder if when they made it to the other side, if the pillar of fire had already solidified the other shoreline, making it like glass. Just a thought. But it says here, they had the harps of God, and they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, which reminds me of Passover right now, how we're remembering what the Father did for the children of Israel, and we're remembering what his beloved Son did for us, as well as what our Father did by sending us his beloved Son. The most precious gift he had to offer, he sent it our way. The beloved Son was a servant to his people. And we see that, but I think a lot of us forget that when the Father set his people free out of Egypt, he was giving them free food, giving them manna for 40 years, giving them water from a rock, giving them all sorts of blessings along the way, and they complained and they forgot about his sacrifice. Just like many of us, we get caught up in this world and we forget about the sacrifices that have been made for us. And it's an important time, I believe, this time of year to remember those sacrifices that were made for us, the foolishness of his people, that blood, the purification of it, that hyssop, which was a purification device throughout the Bible, being used not only to put the blood on the doorpost, but to bring that soured wine up to the mouth of the Messiah as he sat on the cross in his last moments, as he was about to breathe what they thought was his last breath. And hallelujah, he rose again on that third day. How glorious it is that that same power that rose him up is going to come back at that resurrection when I believe the waters above that firmament are going to part, as well as the firmament itself parting like a scroll. If there's still waters above it, they're going to have to part. Otherwise, there's going to be a flood. The waters parting is significant. And like he was saying to the Pharisees before they said he's worthy of death, he's going to return at the right hand of the Most High. And so it's going to be a powerful event, the most powerful event that's ever happened. And every eye is going to see it for that very reason. So I wanted to share these connections. I know it's a lot. We're all over the place, but there's just so many hidden treasures in the Word that are just not really hidden. They're right there. We just don't see them, I feel. And the connections that we see continue to go far deeper. We've talked about them before, Moses and the Messiah, how they were both hidden in Egypt while children were being killed. They both had miracles with water. One was with waters parting, the other was walking on water. Man not living by bread alone. 40 days without food. Miracles of food replenishing. They were both at the transfiguration. The Father always sends us salvation, and it's something that is continuing to happen. It didn't stop with those events. He is still setting his people free, just like he was back then. And so I hope you guys have been blessed by these connections. They're definitely something that I am blessed to see. So I wanted to share it with you guys or have revealed to me. I'm not seeing this stuff because I'm someone special. His Holy Spirit is at work showing us things that bring great clarity and great peace. And so I thank you guys for all that you have done, all that you have shared. Some of these connections have been things that you all have shared with me in the comments, and I have shared now. So if you are one of the people that have shared some of these things, remind me because I can often forget who it was that shared something and I'm speaking about it. And so thank you guys for all the wisdom that you have shared. You all are a blessing. And so thank you guys again for all your support. We love you. The Father loves you, and we will see you next time.